Hello. Good morning. It's been a rough one, I'll tell you. You never cut your finger and then ask yourself, should I go to the hospital or should I just do a band-aid? I opted for band-aid. I don't know if that was the right decision or not. I guess we'll find out if my finger falls off. Anyway, that's about the vibe of today's video. Today we're going to be talking about books, book goals for 2025, book accomplishments for 2024, books that I read at the end of last year, although I'm not going to do really in-depth overviews since it's been a long time since I've made one of these videos. And so there's a lot of books. So last year, I read 69 books. That's right on the dot, 69. Just landed perfectly. You're welcome. I'm here all day, just in case you're curious. Next year, my goal is going to be, you guessed it, 70 books. I'm going to increase that number by exactly one book, and we're going to see how far we get. Now, I know there's a lot of book girlies out there who are aiming for 130 books, 200 books, 500 books, and I'm proud of you. I am. I'm just not going to read that many books, you know? Also, there's something to be said for, and I've fallen into this trap in the past where I'm like, oh, I've got to read, whatever number of books I need to read that year. And I get so stuck in the number that I don't read books that I actually enjoy. I just pick up any book and I read it because then it gets towards my total. And I'm like, well, haha, I'm towards this number at the end of the year. And then it's like, but I've just read a bunch of books that I don't actually like reading. So that sort of took away the point of reading. You know what I mean? So who knows? Maybe I'll hit 70 this year, aiming for that 100%. Or maybe I'll hit 20. Doubtful. I'm an avid reader, so I don't think that's going to happen. But let's pretend that it does, okay? Maybe I'll read 150 books. I don't know. I'm just going to aim for 70, though. That seems about right. Seems about where I'm going to probably land. And, it's a pretty good pace. If you figure there's 52 weeks in the year, at least a book and a half a week, I guess, roughly, maybe slightly less. I should also point out that I do read some chonkers, because I'm a fantasy girly. And some of those books are like this big. It's like five regular size books in a big book. So can I get 5 points for that? I'm just saying. See, this is what I mean. This is why I can't put numbers out there, because then I get all stuck on the numbers and not, the actual book. So I'm just gonna not. Okay, so I'm gonna do my best to give you one sentence reviews for each book read during the last half of last year. So the first book, Radiance by Grace Draven, gave it 3 stars. Monster romance with an arranged marriage, political intrigue, and interesting characters that are different species. I liked this book. Brood and Magic by Jen Wolfhart. I gave this 4 stars. Cozy romantic fantasy with a pet dragon, fae people, a traveling tavern, and low stakes. It's the second book in a series. Highly recommend. You don't need to read the first book, they're all standalones. The Marriage Spell by M.J. Putney. I gave this 3 stars. Arranged marriage-ish, where a spellcaster saves a man's life, and in exchange, he agrees to marry her. It was kind of slow-paced and not as interesting as I wanted it to be. Wild Hunger by Susan Wright. This was a reread in an older book that I knew would get me out of a reading slump. It's a paranormal werewolf series that is everything stereotypical about those types of books. Easy to fall into, nothing particularly shocking there. Gave it 3 stars. The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I love the world and all of the side characters. The book had a strong beginning, however, it kind of lagged towards the middle of the end, but I did enjoy the overall story. It was 3 stars. The Songbird and Heart of the Stone by Carissa Broadbent, 3 stars. This is the second duology of 3 in a series that will have a total of 6 books. Hopefully you caught on to that. I didn't like this book particularly much. I did love the first 2 books. I felt that the main protagonist of this particular book was incredibly irritating and grating to read. I gave this, however, 3 stars due to the fact that it was decent writing. A Hidden Fire by Elizabeth Hunter, the first book of the Elemental series. This is an older series and again another reread to get me out of a reading slump. It's a 5-star read. It's an older series, a vampire romance. Not a lot of steam, but I loved where the story went and I felt the character development was really interesting. I also fell in love with the characters overall. Hence, I reread it. The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. This was a pretty low stakes, cozy book. It has a romantic through line, although it's really not the point of the book. And really, what made the read worth it for me was the sentient spider plant. This Same Earth, another reread in the same Elemental series by Elizabeth Hunter. Highly recommend if you like a good romance vampire story. Again, older series, but really enjoyed it. Red Rising, first book in the Red Rising saga by Pierce Brown, 5 stars. Absolutely love this book. Great for sci-fi lovers. This is a book that gets you right in the chest, pretty much off the cuff, and keeps you fast-paced the entire time. It's a great read. Embers in the Snow by Anna Carvin, 3 stars. Arranged marriage with a vampire, kind of slower paced, but still reasonably entertaining. I honestly forgot a lot about this book before I made this video. I forgot I even read it, so that kind of tells you everything. Sort of blends it in the background with other reads. Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I gave this book 4.5 stars. It's very fast paced and surprisingly addictive to read. It's a paranormal romance in a haunted mansion setting. Highly recommend. Luxuria, first book in the Shades of Sin by Colette Rhodes. Interesting monster romance where the monsters are like shadow monsters. It was entertaining. I felt like it was kind of predictable. I might continue with the series, I might not. I haven't decided. Sorceress Comes to Call by T. King Fisher. This is a really well-loved book, so please don't come for me, but I found that this book, despite being very short, dragged on, and therefore I didn't really connect well with the story. It might have been a mood thing, so don't come for me. I gave it 2 stars. The Captive Prince series, books 1 through 3. Read trigger warnings for this one. It is a political fantasy, political intrigue type book with a male-male romance. I found it interesting and entertaining. I gave each of these books on average 3, 4, and 3 stars. Times Convert by Deborah Harkness. This is a continuation of the All Souls trilogy, Discovery of Witches. They actually made a show on it. I did love the first 3 books, and I loved the show, and so I decided to read the continuation. The book was pretty good. It didn't really add much to the original trilogy, but I read it anyway and found it entertaining. The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore, first book in the Dream Harbor series. It's a standalone. I gave it 3 stars. It was a grumpy romance sunshine, very Gilmore Girls inspired, and pretty entertaining, but also reasonably predictable. Golden Sun, book 2 of the Red Rising saga. I gave this 5 stars. It's by Pierce Brown once again. I highly recommend this book if you love sci-fi. It's very fast-paced. There's always something going on. The end of this book is gonna get you right in the chest. It's a really good series, highly recommend. Quicksilver, Fae and Alchemy, book number 1 by Callie Hart. I gave this 4 stars. Interestingly, it took me 2 attempts to get into this book, but once I did, I loved the book and I really enjoyed the magic system. The Plated Prisoners series, book 1, 2, and 3, Gild, Glint, and Gleam. First 3 books of this series. Read trigger warnings, highly bingeable series with magic, romance, and interesting twists and turns along the way. Overall, I would average the rating for this about 4.5 stars. The Courting of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson. Entertaining-ish. There was way too much going on in this story. It was a romantic fantasy where I didn't fully buy the romance as well. There was just so many elements of what this book was trying to bring in and trying to become that it was a little disjointed overall. Probably will not continue with the series. However, I did think it was entertaining-ish. I gave it 3 stars. Role-playing. This is by Kathy Yardley, a romance with 2 protagonists over the age of 40, bringing an interesting perspective to the genre itself. I highly recommend this book. I rated it 4 stars. Filthy Rich Vampires. It was all right. I didn't feel particularly attached to the characters, and the story itself was a little all over the place. By the time I got done with this book, I felt like I had a little bit of whiplash. This book was by Geneva Lee, and I rated it 3 stars. Heart Song is the 3rd book in the Green Creek series by T.J. Klune, the male-male werewolf romance. It's pretty good. I highly recommend it. In fact, I recommend the whole series. Under the Oak Tree, Volume 1 by Suji Kim. I gave this 5 stars. It's a dirty good time with a story that was fast-paced and interesting. I recommend the audiobook for this one only because the original story was actually written, I want to say in Korean. I think Suji Kim is from South Korea. And I felt like when I sat down to read it, that language translation made it a little hard to fall into, the cadence. But if you listen to the audiobook, it helps a lot with that. Iron Flame, which is the 2nd book of the Empyrean, I guess, series. I don't know how many books it's ultimately going to be. I liked the 1st book. I gave it about 4 stars. This 2nd book by Rebecca Yarros, I gave 2 stars. The reason being is because I DNF'd it 3 times before I stubbornly forced myself to actually get to the end of the book, and it's only because I wanted to know where the series is going. I will be reading the 3rd book in the series to see if it actually rescues itself, but honestly, I really didn't like this 2nd book. Lights Out, Into the Darkness, book number 1 by Nevessa Allen. This is, read the trigger warnings, but it's a dirty, dark, somewhat comical romance that I found pretty entertaining. In fact, I recommended it for my book club with a bunch of my friends. I gave it 4 stars. It is a ridiculous read. Again, read those trigger warnings and keep in mind it is very, very dirty, but also very, very entertaining. All right, so that wraps up all the reads for 2020 or the second half of 2024. If you guys have any book recommendations, please leave them in the comments below and like this video. And let me know what other type of book content you would like to see.